I'm here in Las Vegas at the Heartland Institute's 9th Conference on Climate Change, International Conference on Climate Change. And we just had a breakout session. Dr. Willie soon is being honored here as one of the awardees here. He's an astrophysicist and astronomer and has done a tremendous amount of work on the effect of the solar influence on climate and the weather, among other things. So thank you very much for
thank
joining
you, Bill.
us here. You were just in this past panel where we had several of your distinguished colleagues here,
Yes.
Dr. William Gray, Dr. Kinnemeth, and Dr. Roy Spencer. They all gave differing opinions on the effect of the ocean, the hydrothermic effect on the climate. First of all, how did that grab you in terms of differences in your beliefs in the solar effect on the climate?
Okay. The first very good thing that I have to emphasize in such an important conference that the Heartland Institute has worked so hard to put together and then to get all of us together in this room is indeed that we're not seeking consensus, because if you talk anything about consensus, that's completely anti-science. This is one of the finest examples of a tradition how science should be conducted, where you state your hypothesis and then you discuss it as much as you can and then provide as much evidence as you can and then counter evidence so that you can subject your own preconception about any ideas about how climate should vary. For example, here they are discussing about the ocean. I wouldn't say that they disagree too much, except in terms of just very specific details. And then also the differences is basically among the three gentlemen and three great scientists is basically on the timescale issue. One is talking about glacial interglacial timescale, which is 100,000 years. Another person is basically more talking about a short-term meteorological effect of adding the role of cloud, which is by Professor Roy Spencer, the University of Alabama, Huntsville. And then Bill Gray, who is also a meteorologist. I do not see any major disagreement in terms of what their outcome, in terms of their thinking. There's one clear message, though, that I can bet that I've not misinterpreted or missummarized anything, which is the simple question that we all also wanted to know, is how much does the increase of atmospheric CO2 to the climate could affect the ocean and the heat storage in the ocean, and of course, the warming of the whole atmosphere, including the land and so on and so forth, and affecting the whole climate system. The simple conclusion is that this CO2 is a gas of life. It will enhance biological activities. All plants will grow better, animals will live better, there'll be more food around. And then slightly warmer is always preferable condition for ecosystem, for human life, for human activities. So that's a basic picture that I get from, it's not that I'm trying to build any false consensus, but there is a certain strong evidence that been, I would say, collected over centuries of this kind of basic understanding of what this molecule called carbon with two oxygen around, is affecting the system. For the IPCC, which is the Interpanel Governmental on Climate Change, which will be our next session, to suggest and propose that if you keep increasing the atmospheric CO2, that it will cause all these catastrophic effects. In fact, it will kill many millions of people. It will, in fact, you'll do all this harm and damages for the IPCC to suggest that. With the level of counter evidence that we are able to provide, meaning that the CO2 is a very good thing and so on and so forth. We couldn't even measure the effects of this carbon dioxide on any weather system, any climate variables. You can imagine if you want to just talk about the CO2 warming the globe. If you study the climate global temperature for the last, 17 or 18 years, why is it that during this time, atmospheric carbon dioxide did increase, of course, by quite large amount, actually, almost like, I would say 10% at least, or 12 to 15% over this time period. The global temperature does stay flat. For science, I think this really should give a pause for you to suggest that atmospheric carbon dioxide is a major player controlling the climate system, taking it to shake it up and down, right? And then from my own personal research, for IPCC, to propose that the sun have no role in the climate system, I mean, come on, it's almost like a joke. But it's a very sad joke because by not wanting to study this natural aspect of the, how the climate system is operating, we are missing out quite a lot. We're missing out the true understanding and the true preparation of how to adapt to any climate conditions that would come before us. Either
you have been you and others like you have been vindicated in the last couple of years by quite a few different scientific bodies and others who've come out and acknowledged the solar influence. Correct?
In some sense, I would say the news is positive only in the sense that we keep publishing strong evidence of where the evidence come from. So the science work like this. When if you have one or two cases or evidence, okay, you will say, all right, But if you started to accumulate hundreds and thousands of cases, the weight of the evidence get a lot more significant. And therefore, I would say that indeed, slowly, although it's very hard to affect these very large political forces we call IPCC, but then we shall do our best. And I do only want to close by saying that we want to encourage everybody who are curious about, if in case you are agnostic or neutral about this position about what CO2 could do to the climate system, I would encourage everybody to come to the Heartland Institute to look at this Climate Change Reconsidered 2 report. We have series of reports. We have 2 reports right now. One is on the physical sciences, one is on the biological impacts. I believe there will be a third one on the economic and the policy suggestion. So these are all, I would say, state-of-the-art. Whatever IPCC is, we're not. Because I would call them anti-science, and then we will do our best to subscribe to the scientific principle of, rigorous science. Doing the best to ourselves, to disagree with ourselves, to make sure that we are not proposing anything that is, out of the standard scientific norm, which means you provide evidence to every statement that you make. Okay, and then do not invoke any authority. Because it just doesn't work. I mean, some of you may have heard of this story about Professor Albert Einstein, who proposed the idea of special relativity and general relativities, as early as early of this 20th century. Then you have this bunch of supposedly German Academy of scientists, about hundreds or so of them, publishing a doctrinal report against Professor Albert Einstein. And I would like the audience, at least your audience, to know that Professor Albert Einstein have a very simple statement to make. If my theory and idea is incorrect in any way that you can show me, one would be sufficient. That is the idea of how scientific principle works. One do not make false proposition, false accusation, this hurling back and forth.
Can I get
political.
Willie soon and Dr. Bob Carter?
I thank you for your listening. I have to go for my panel. Thank you, Bill. Thank you.